Welcome to the latest This Week's Acca podcast, sponsored by Skybet Acca Freeze. Tom, Jimmy and special guest Gab Sutton with you to run through the schedule. Coming up on this episode then, it is an international break, but the limited fixtures haven't stopped us putting together a fourfold around the 16-1 marker. That is our biggest priced accumulator of the season for the joint fewest teams. Please, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel to make sure that you never miss an episode. And remember to keep it fun. Never bet more you can afford. This podcast is 18 plus. Please gamble responsibly. Before we build this week's Acca, let's look back on last week's, of which I was not here. I have no idea what you picked. I do, but...
Where did you go?
I'm just going to pretend that for television reasons and audio, that I'm going to pretend, I don't know what you did last week. I was in Prague.
Prague,
yes.
Did you watch the big fixture?
Sparta-Slavia. No, I flew back that time, and then my plane was delayed, so I maybe could have made it.
Before I do that boring stuff about last week, I asked Joe where you went, and he said, I'm pretty sure he's gone to London to watch the NFL.
No. I was in Prague to watch the NHL, so there's some similarities there.
Any restaurants you'd recommend in Prague?
All of them, anywhere. Everywhere is really cheap, incredibly cheap. In fact, the Czech Pilsner was so cheap on the Friday night that I woke up on the Saturday morning and genuinely, for a minute, had to go, did that Melier thing on Friday night actually happen? I just dreamt that and gone, that's a weird way for it to happen, but I definitely watched it.
It seems like Eastern European travel is kind of like a nice budget sort of getaway for a lot of people, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an absolutely lovely place. And to be honest, the football's boring. This should be a travel show, in my opinion. Prague is lovely. If you get a chance, go. Lovely architecture, lovely style to it. Lovely beer, lovely pubs, lovely shops, lovely restaurants. Last week's Acca, Jimmy. Tell me what happened. As I say, I wasn't here, so how did we get on?
I didn't win. To be honest, I'm just looking. It says we didn't have a loser, but it felt like we was never going to win because Shrewsbury took a 2-0 lead at Bolton. But having said that, Bolton tied up the game, and there was about 10 minutes where it was sort of in the balance. Exeter beat Cambridge, West Brom were 0-0. With Millwall, Bolton were drawing, they drew against Shrewsbury, Wrexham beat Northampton, and MK Dons were leading until the last seconds against beloved Nigel Atkins, Tranmere. So it felt like it was literally in the balance going into the last 5-10 minutes, but we still needed 2 results, and we ended up getting a drop in a result. So bollocks, we lost another one.
At least it wasn't 5 wins going into that MK Dons one.
Oh,
that would have been. At least we knew it was game over, right?
Yeah,
in a weird way,
and we can take some comfort in that.
In a weird way. Comments? Anyone? Anything good that you'd like to highlight? I guess
Bolton Seaport, lads, do you know this isn't the pools, so we don't want draws? ? Winners only, please. Cheers. And I've got to be honest, I thought this whole time we was entering the pools, so that is good to know.
It's a good time to realise it ahead of this week's.
What is the pools?
The pools is like an old thing, and Dom, our producer, is very old, so he'll be able to say that. But it was like
ancient.
It was like a points sort of thing, I think. And then you had like win, draw, win. I'm not that much older than you, so I think it was before my time as well.
Hello.
But it was something like you had a form and you went and I think it was like building an Acca basically.
And we're not doing that.
In fact, this is a way to get comments in. Please tell us what the pools is. Explain it.
Bolton C. You clearly know. Can you get back in touch and explain to me what they are? Because I don't have a clue.
Explain the pools and we'll revisit this next week. And then actually it could be a case that, yes, maybe we are really good at winning the pools and great. Get ourselves a nice leather jacket or something with the winnings. What? I don't know. Just trying to think.
You own any leather jackets?
I was trying to think of something very 80s.
Oh,
because
pools
is probably it's high.
Like big hair?
Yeah, just goes outwards. Like Jimmy's kind of a bit longer and, nice kind of double denim.
Was
90s.
Bullseye? Was that in the 80s?
Yeah,
Game
probably,
show?
Yeah.
Bringing it back.
Super smashing great.
Yeah.
What the hell is that?
The expression on Bill's
Yeah, everyone wanted a speedboat. That was the gig.
How do they split a speedboat?
I don't know. How do you think the random 2-bed terraced houses could store speedboats? But there we are. So, what was it? 2 wins, 3 draws last week.
Forgettable.
Just like not a million miles off.
Season.
Not a million miles off.
Gab, you were on last week as well, weren't you?
I was.
Yes.
Enjoyed it so much you're back?
Absolutely. Well, more of the fact that I was actually booked for this.
Oh,
show,
right, okay. So didn't enjoy it that much.
No, try that again.
Already was paid, so here he is.
There was no relationship between my level of enjoyment of last week's show and my appearance on this.
No.
Make a great politician. What a diplomatic answer to saying no. Brilliant.
Just do that again. Just say, I loved it so much. Can't get enough of you. Glad to be back. Just try that bit again. Ask him again.
So, Gab, you were on last week. You enjoyed it so much, you're back this week.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, there we go. There we are. This week, then, it's international break, of course. It's I think, in terms of Acca building, probably the worst international break because we have the FA Cup as well in this one for qualifications. Yeah. So you lose the National League and things like that. 2 remain in League One, I believe. I think 10 in League Two remain. League One, more and more games are getting canned for internationals. I'm sure last year it was basically 3 games.
Woke nonsense.
Every single international.
Do you know what, though, Tom? I kind of feel like you've got to kind of cancel the League One on international break because it's not really worth it for 2 or 3 games. And fans are probably going to see the fixture lists in August, or and sort of make their plans for games, and then not realise that the games might be cancelled. So there's an asterisk over those games, and if you don't know that of those asterisks, it's kind of unfair on people making those sort of travel plans. So I would say either play those League One games and have the full billing, and I don't care how many players you have out on international duty, or you say we're scrapping the whole weekend and we're just going to do League Two.
I would like to see him make him play it. Serves him right for having internationals done it in League One. It serves him right.
Just do it. I did the EFL trophy, didn't just do that.
Yeah.
Just do it. Just go for
it. I'm supposed to be at Oakwell this weekend, so are Barnsley still playing Reading, or is that cancelled?
No, that's not going to go ahead.
Shit. I see, very organised and up to date. No, that was canned ages ago.
Oh, God.
Have we found it this week?
Well, Barnsley aren't going to turn up, so it's kind of...
Hey-o! It started.
It's one for Jimmy. Yeah.
One for Joe Townsend there. And Jimmy, evidently. How have you found picking teams potentially to win for the Acca?
You know what? I think when it's a shriveled docket like it is, it really hones your concentration and you look for stuff that you wouldn't usually look. Do you know, like when it's Prem, Champ, League One, League Two, on a usual Saturday?
Yep.
Sometimes there's too much confusing you. You're drawn to this game, that game, and you get stuck in patterns that you've already done. Like we put up Wrexham every week when they're at home. But when it's like this, I find myself looking for new stuff about new teams. So I actually have enjoyed it, but I'm not sure if we're going to be able to make a conventional Acca.
If you've enjoyed it so much, give us the strongest fancy you have, because I feel that there's going to be probably a shorter Acca, maybe, and a lot of kind of disagreement and having to go for out of comfort zones a little bit to back teams we wouldn't usually on a full slate.
Sure.
Jimmy, I'll chuck to you then. You've enjoyed it. Give us your strongest fancy that we can just all get on board with immediately.
Well, on our YouTube community,
apparently we have that.
Social media wizard and managerial wizard, actually, now George Pitts. He's put on...
Shows anyone can get them.
You actually didn't believe me, Gab, and I said, no, he's a management now. He's management. Gab went, what? Man, he couldn't even manage to run himself a bath.
One of the voices on our TikTok, by the way, if you want to check that out. Come on.
Anyway, he put, which team should you go for in this week's Acca? And on our YouTube community, whatever that is, popular picks was Wimbledon and Barrow. They're not my favourite pick. My favourite pick would probably be Gillingham, 4-5 at home to Accrington.
Yeah.
4-5 is a pretty solid price, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I thought. I think what has happened here is Gillingham's last 2 defeats. What was it? Grimsby and was it Crewe at last weekend? Yeah. I think that's just pumped up the price. Lovely, just in time for us. And watched the game. Well, I didn't watch it, but I paid special attention to the game at Crewe, and it was actually Gillingham's best performance statistically. In terms of shots and whatnot, they just got picked off a couple of times on the counter, as was the Grimsby goal in midweek, similar counter attack. Mark Bonner was fuming after the defeat at the weekend, and I expect a big reaction because he pulled no punches in post match, and I just think the price is massive. Mark
Bonner was a universally kind of popular appointment for Gillingham on this podcast, particularly for you, Gab. As it's shown early stages, it's been the right move.
I think so. I think Gillingham have had lots of injuries and absentees so far this season, which hasn't helped them from a creative point of view. They've got Bradley Dack to come back in. So I want to see them create a few more chances. I don't know if Jimmy feels the same based on the numbers. But they've got a really solid defensive unit, last week aside. And I expect them to get back to a clean sheet.
Yep.
And they're hosting an Accrington Stanley side who have got the worst defensive record in the league. I actually think Accrington Stanley have shown some signs of life. I saw them at Cheltenham a couple of weeks ago. I think they can create chances. They've got Sean Wiley there. So I don't think they're as bad as maybe the league table suggests. But I would if it was any shorter than 4 to 5, I maybe would be a bit more hesitant. But at 4 to 5, I think that's a pretty good price for the Gillingham win.
I think we're all on board with this then. Should we take it first pick of this week's Acca?
Let's go for
Comes
it.
from Sky Bet League Two. And as we've said there, it is Gillingham for a home win over Accrington. We've got Gillingham then, all three of us on board with backing them for a home win over Accrington. Gab, who do you want to talk about next? Where should we go?
I would like to talk about Barrow.
Yes.
I think that they're 4 to 7, so again a bit of a short price. But 19 points from their first 10 games. Super impressed with the left back Ben Jackson and the midfielder Kean Spence being two of the top performers in the division so far this season. Jackson's becoming a bit of an assist king, isn't he? From left back. They've got Katia Kawati from Everton, who's really impressed me as well. And they've got Emil Acca, who gives them a real physical presence up top. And Morecambe, again, a little bit like we were speaking earlier with Accrington Stanley, I still think they have been able to create chances this season, and probably a little bit unlucky to have to not have more points on the board. But they've not got very much quality. I think in terms of individual quality, it's one of the worst League Two squads on paper that we've seen for a long time. And that means that they've got to be at 100% to get anything out of their games. Whereas, and that's kind of what makes me worried, because they weren't at 100% in terms of the intangibles at Accrington Stanley last week, in the first half at Fleetwood a couple of weeks ago. And I think against a really good footballing Barrow side who are doing some great stuff under Stephen Clements, I'm happy to back them at 4 to 7, even if it is a bit of a short price.
It is a short price.
I'd
have to. I think Morecambe's only away point was that Fleetwood.
2-2, yeah. They came back from 2 behind.
And that was the game where they came from 2 behind, but didn't they concede 10, 11 shots on target in the first half? Was it? It was, as batterings go.
They were battered in that.
That is a batter. I mean, it's the Derek Adams dig in, let's try and get something here, which fair enough. But on you simulate that game 100 more times, you're not getting a comeback, are you, based on those chances in the first half? So it is a short price, but in terms of what is a limited slate, you touched on the comments there, Jimmy, it's going to be a game that a lot of people are looking towards, and I can't really think of a logistical argument that says we shouldn't go for this game, apart from, wouldn't it be typical if this happened? But that's not really where you should approach.
It's lazy, isn't it? Yeah.
Team A better than Team B. Team A's at home. There.
Yeah. Morecambe, only one of 4 sides winless in the English Football League. And you look at the teams, they've lost 2 on the road. Walsall, Doncaster, they're both similar sort of calibre as Barrow, although they were only 1-0 wins. But the most damning is that one against Accrington, because those two, they're going to do well to stay up, and they've lost that battle against Accrington. So they were coming near at an all-time low. Going to Barrow, sorry. They won't be coming here. They were going to Barrow at an all-time low. So these were my second on my list, my second strongest. I want it in.
Brilliant. I think we're all on board with this. As it's an international break, I like to kind of pick Gab's brain a little bit. Barrow, top 7 potential based on their start. Mm-hmm. Do you think it's possible? Because in terms of the odds anyway, there's a number of teams who are a shorter price than them. Even money, 5 to 4 is the price you're looking at on Barrow. But based on the start, confidence that they can sustain it for the season.
Great start for Barrow. Definitely more optimistic about them this season than perhaps going into the campaign. I think me and maybe other pundits on League Two have been guilty of underestimating Barrow minus Pete Wild, and because they've actually got a really good sporting director called Ian Wood, and they've some good things going on behind the scenes. So yes, they've managed 2 top 10 finishes under Pete Wild, but actually it wasn't just down to him. So I think we're probably seeing that this season, and actually they're looking after the ball a bit better, I think, under Stephen Clements. So fair play to them. In terms of top 7, I'm really curious to see how things level out because you've got MK Dons, who I think are going to come into the equation under Scott Lindsay. You've got other teams that in mid-table that I fancy as well, like Grimsby are a good side. AFC Wimbledon have got lots of games in hand. So I don't see many teams in the top 7 that I'm very confident are going to fall out. Barrow, one of those who could make way if one of those sides sort of below put together a real run. So I'm not going to go overboard on this. I think bigger tests are to come, but they've got players to come back as well. They've been without some key players, Robbie Gotts, Niall Canavan. They've been without some really important players in the first 10 games, and they've still been able to put together a brilliant point tally. So fantastic work from Stephen Clements.
Interesting you say about teams. You mentioned them, take Dons and Wimbledon. They're both short price to finish top 7. Then Barrow 10th favourite in the market. I'd say gains 5-4.
I think that's reasonable because it's a quarter of the way through the season, or a bit less than that even. I think MK are going to put together a great run under Scott Lindsay. You look at the work he did at Crawley last season. Grimsby, I think, are a good side.
Interesting. No, I've literally just got it up on Auschecker. The cut-off is Bradford, 5-4 as well as Barrow. Yuck.
Oh, I can't see Bradford finishing.
Grimsby. I know you'll like this as well.
Just a bit.
Cheeky little mariner. 9-2, 11-2 in places.
11-2.
Top 7.
I'll tell you what,
wanna slide to that?
we'll revisit that shortly, and we'll
Sure.
talk about a couple of teams that we mentioned there. We seem, despite kind of questionable on Barrow's top 7 potential, but we're confident that they can get a win over Morecambe this weekend.
Absolutely.
There we go then. So 17-10, the double around that marker so far. Joining Gillingham to beat Accrington, we're taking Barrow to beat Morecambe.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess we didn't get the memo about an easy
talk.
select.
We touched on, mentioned a few teams there, particularly teams that Gab fancies, who are playing this weekend. 2 of them that are at home, and 2 teams I had down as potentials, and 2 teams who should be together at last. MK Dons and AFC Wimbledon. Sure, that won't anger anyone. Please delete that for my own protection to the production team there. But MK Dons are at home to Port Vale. AFC Wimbledon at home to Carlisle. Wimbledon finally back playing at home. You mentioned about the games in hand there because of the pitch issues that they had down there. 2 games that I have down. Any interest in taking either Wimbledon to beat Carlisle or MK Dons to beat Port Vale this weekend?
I have a lot of interest in taking Port Vale to beat MK Dons.
What?
Just look at the game against Notts County. They basically just said, have the ball, County. Just take it, dominate it. We'll just sit back, soak it up, hit them on the break. They got their noses in front, and then they just let them have the ball again. County created next to nothing. And I know we was all hot on MK Dons pre-season. It's not exactly worked out yet, but we was also pretty hot on Port Vale. And
I think we were hot on MK Dons. She said, Williamson's, it's overrated. They'll get someone like Scott Lindsay will come in and sort them out. If I remember rightly, that's what I think I said.
You were playing 3D chess, weren't you?
I think if I remember rightly, I'm paraphrasing a bit maybe what I said pre-season, but
But the other thing is the game that really interested me again was the 1-0 win at against Chesterfield for Port Vale. Again, it was like an individual isolated game where Darren Moore set him up, and he sat off him again, but he really squeezed the midfield, and he didn't allow any of Chesney's ball players in the middle of the park to have any time on the ball. And I just thought it was a really interesting individual games against Notts County. You think they're going to be a top team this season?
Yeah.
Can't disagree with you having, 9-10 games in. Chesterfield, they were 8-1 anti-post favourites, and he's done a job on both of them.
No, Jimmy, I'll give you the Chesterfield game because that was great for it. But I think you play that game, Notts County against Port Vale, 100 times. I think Port Vale win 5 or 10 of them, and I think Notts County win 60 or 70. Like, if you look at the chances, Laurent Talladge, great first-time finish, super clinical, what they brought him in from Old Shot to do. But Notts County had a lot of chances. They put lots of crosses in the box for Alassane Jatta, and on another day, Notts County could have scored 2 or 3. They had a very there were times I've literally just watched the highlights this morning.
I watched the highlights this morning.
Yeah,
We could have watched them together.
we should have done. Yeah, we should have cozied up on the sofa, Jimmy. But there were times when Port Vale had literally all 11 men behind the ball.
Yes.
There's no outlets.
Exactly.
And
No,
that's
this is
not
what I'm saying.
sustainable. So you do that,
I
and
think it is.
you think that's sustainable?
Absolutely. If you 1-0 in front,
Get back!
what are you doing, Bassy Edgy York? Get
You
back
don't
in
leave
here.
that all the You need outlets. You need 1 or 2 players up the pitch to give you some sort of oxygen. Because that might have
To be
worked.
fair, they will need oxygen if they're going to win. Otherwise,
Yeah,
they're just
oxygen.
Not gonna be able to
Do
breathe.
you know what,
It'll give you oxygen, okay?
in my
You can have that.
experience, oxygen does tend to help succeed at things, doesn't
Thank
it?
you. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, great.
That's all I'm saying.
Well, if that's what
So
you're
we having him?
asserting, that and that alone, I'll agree with you on that. Yeah.
I was actually, I feel like you may have answered the question a little bit there, but I was going to ask you, Gab, are Port Vale starting to come together a little bit? After what was a shaky start, and
Yeah.
it's hard to place, I think, top 7, obviously, and the squad that they were building, it's starting to come together a little bit. Do you think now it is actually coming together under more?
Yes and no. I don't think they're going to finish in the top 3 because I don't think that they're well coached enough as a footballing side, as a coherent identity. But I do think they might finish top 7 because of the individual quality. They've got George Byers there. They've got 3 or 4 players up top who can score goals. Talaj, Rory Patton.
I really like Ronan Curtis as well. I'm
Yeah.
just hoping he kicks up. But I suppose what you're saying, that's the trade-off with Darren Moore, isn't it? Like, crap technically, tactically might be a bit of an exaggeration, but not very good tactically. But the pulling power of that bloke to get in the quality of players is unbelievable.
Yeah, I think he can design certain tactics for one-off games, but I think in terms of...
Yes. And that's why we should have them this week.
But in terms of building a real identity that can lead to consistency and put together a real winning run, I don't really see Darren Moore doing that. I think his teams have always relied on individual quality, and I think that might get you top 7. I don't think it gets you top 3.
And they've got Jaden Stockley, who wins 100 aerial duels every game. So I will give them that. Above all, striker who's good in the air. That's all you need. I think we need to move on from MK Dons Port Vale because I don't think we're going to ever come to an agreement on it.
We love each other, really.
Yeah, well, there you go.
You wanted MK Dons.
Yeah, Gab can have a draw then. Okay, and we'll come back to it.
No,
next.
I'm having MK Dons.
I'll have draw then. There we go. What about Wimbledon Carlisle? I mentioned that one. Any interest in taking Wimbledon now they're back at home? 3 wins from 3 before, obviously, the pitch floods, and they managed to get that repaired. Carlisle, Mike Williamson's in. They're still in the adjustment period.
Yes.
And
So
the results haven't come immediately. Early managerial impact. It's not happened because they're adjusting still.
Sorry, who's manager of Carlisle now?
Mike Williamson.
Iron Mike.
Iron Mike.
Iron Mike. Sorry, mate.
Mike Williamson. Like, who the hell
Iron
is
Mike.
that? Iron Mike.
For me, Wimbledon are just a bit odds on, around 17 to 20. But again, I'd quite like to make the most of this weird period for Carlisle and backing against them for that reason.
I agree because I think they've been without Callum Guy. I think he did play for them in the EFL Trophy in midweek, but he's not going to be quite at full fitness, and that's been a problem for Carlisle without Taylor Charters as well. And they've also got a couple of centre forwards in Luke Armstrong and Charlie White who have been recruited for Paul Simpson. I'm not sure Mike Williamson would necessarily have chosen him, or indeed much of some of the squad that he's actually got. So this is a transitional period
Big
for
strikers. More big strikers.
Sure. And I think with Wimbledon, they have suffered from a lack of match practice, possibly with the absence of games. But what I think they're really good at as a club is rallying together in times of adversity. And I think that's
I've got to
created...
disagree. I can't think of one single example where Wimbledon have ever had to rally against adversity.
Yeah.
Sarcasm.
Nice, Jimmy. Nice. I suppose, should we take Wimbledon?
I'll go with Wimbledon.
I don't know if we'd finish
Last
points there,
season,
but
we had a thing about going against new managers because of the new manager bounce or the changing circumstances. Are we writing that off this season?
he's had a couple of games now, hasn't he? He's had a few games in charge.
What is this, his third league game?
I think it might be his fourth.
Fourth, yeah. It doesn't feel that they've won at all in that run. I think they might have drawn one, but
I think
feel
it might
like
have
the
drawn
others
two and lost
Yeah.
one or something.
But I'm happy to put it aside. I think Wimbledon at home.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You
On
two
board?
seem so confident. Yes, I'm on board.
Right, we'll take it. Let's move on because we discussed a lot there. I think we can make a fourfold here, and we will discuss the next team shortly.
Yep.
Okay. Good.
No, I was just going to say those 3 teams are at exactly 4-1.
Exactly, Jimmy, what I was about to say.
4
to 1, yeah, and it's 3 home teams as well. Big tick in my book there. We've got AFC Wimbledon to beat Carlisle, we've got Barrow to beat Morecambe, and we have Gillingham to beat Accrington. We have got space for one more team in our Acca, I feel like, because of the price we're at so far. I am going to mention a big price one, and one that I'm going to just put in the category of nice price. I feel that would happen. Grimsby Town are away at Salford City this weekend. Grimsby are incredibly unpredictable, I think it's fair to say, but prior to last week's what is unfortunately becoming a bit of an annual tradition for them in a thrashing at home by Doncaster, they were on a really good run. They're on a really good run of form, and they are 11-5, above 2-1 for an away win at a Salford side who are mightily unimpressive this season. Yeah, I think in what is a very limited slate, it's a good chance to go for a bigger price team, a team that we wouldn't usually potentially look towards. But Grimsby Town, and I've heard Gab say it on this episode, a fan of them, which instantly then gives me more confidence in doing so. But I like the look of them to beat Salford this weekend.
Yeah, I think the big difference for me between Grimsby Town and Salford City, and why I think the former are the better side, is a difference in the recruitment processes. I think for Grimsby it's much more scientific, much more rigorous, and much more joined up. And you had Artell flying off to Ireland and to Iceland to sort of meet these players and find Cameron McJanet and Jason Svanthorst and his great start to the season. And it's all joined up towards the style of play that they want. With Salford City, it's completely different. They basically signed Cole Stockton and who's the other lad? Ben Woodburn. Yes. And Carl Robinson has realised since one of them was taken off at half-time in the 2-1 home victory over Cheltenham, that they can't play simultaneously because neither of them do any running against the ball. And both of them are probably two of the highest earners at the club. So for me, Salford City's recruitment process is really questionable because they actually have owners who are kind of taking responsibility for that, and so it's not really a meritocracy, whereas Grimsby Town have a really good head of recruitment in Joe Hutchinson. So for me, Grimsby Town, their recruitment process, they've got some great players, a lot of players who are developing a lot, Evan Corey and George McEachran, really good technicians in midfield. I think the Mariners are going to go to the Peninsula Stadium. I think they're going to call the shots. I think they're going to boss the game, and I think they're going to win.
And on kind of Jimmy talks about Port Vale's ability to set up for one game. In Artell, it seems to be a lot of tweaking and a lot of not being set in your ways and being able to go, right, we can try this. I think in the EFL Cup, EFL Trophy, midweek, they played some kind of 4-1-5 sort of formation at Lincoln. So there's a lot of adjustments there as well that in the long run, in theory, should serve them well.
By the way, Jaden Luca played really well, apparently, against Lincoln City in midweek in the EFL Trophy, and he's another option to come back into that midfield equation. So lots of some options now for David Artell, which is great.
Yeah, and you said Artell's a bit of a tinker man. I feel like Carl Robinson is got some sort of identity. He said in the post-match after the recent win last weekend against FC Wimbledon that he's happy because his side's starting to get some of his identity, whatever that means. And in complete contrast to what you were saying about Grimsby's gaffer, I don't think Carl Robinson's going to give Grimsby the respect they perhaps deserve, and I think that's going to play into the hands of the away side potentially. Would you agree? No waffle?
I feel like we're talking ourselves into something that we're all in agreement with already.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's a big price. There's limited fixtures. It feels like a bit of an opportunity to go a bit bigger.
What would it do to our Acca, Tom?
It would take us to above 15-1 pre-boost on a fourfold, and we'll ask the lovely folks at Sky Bet to give us a nice little bump on that as well.
Gorgeous.
4 games there, all League Two, best league in the world. Are we settled on it? I feel like we're happy here with the Acca that we built.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that.
There we go then. This week's Acca is as follows. 4 teams, as I say, they're above the 15-1 marker, pushing 16-1. We have AFC Wimbledon to beat Carlisle. We have Barrow to beat Morecambe, Gillingham to beat Accrington, and the only away team is a big price one, but one we fancy. It's Grimsby Town to beat Salford City. And as we say, every single week, remember to keep it fun, never bet more you can afford, and please gamble responsibly. Make sure you get in touch with us on social media. Let us know your thoughts on the Acca. Let us know what the pools is and how it works, please. So we know that for next week, and we'll read that out either on the YouTube comments, search Sport Night Football. You'll be able to find us that way. And as I teased there, we will get that boosted by Sky Bet. So head over to sportinglife.com/football. Midday on Friday, you'll be able to find the link to back that at an enhanced price. And one final plug, as I always get told, please follow and rate us on Apple Podcasts. I've remembered again this time, Spotify, or your chosen podcast provider. We'll be back next week.